What is a manifesto?
A piece of long-form writing that explains someone's ideologies, or it could be a political party or something like that. But that's the general idea, just explain what someone thinks in a, like it could be a book, it could be a chapter, you know, but it's not just an essay.
So a manifesto is a long-form piece of media that aims to define the ideology of either an individual or a group of people, such as a political party.
So what's coming to mind is, because I don't have like a dictionary text definition, I have a bunch of ideas floating around. It's mostly based on like ideas and beliefs, and it's more, the idea I'm getting is more long form, more text heavy, so to speak. I'm thinking of a nice big book like this.
Okay. My understanding of a manifesto is just a list of initiatives and changes that either you want to make or the people who have the power to make those changes should be making.
A manifesto is a proposition or a declaration given to by any political party or politician that it's their idea of how they would change the current state of affairs in any sovereign state.
So just politicians, like? Or
No, not just politicians. The way a manifesto is just a declaration of any change in general, but the way people know what a manifesto is in general is through politics.
Il-manifest hija l-karta fejn miktub l-ideoloġiji tal-partit politiku jew tas-soċjetà li eżempju ejja ngħidu jiena soċjalist jew xi komunist nistgħu ngħidu. U nikteb eżempju x'naħseb dwar il-pajjiż, x'naħseb jista' jsir fil-pajjiż.
Well, obviously, you come up with the most prototypical example being the communist one. So it's a relatively short paper that explains the goals of a political or social movement.
I suppose manifesto is a way of communicating thoughts. It's similar to a philosophical essays. It's usually an attempt to press notions such as political change, socio-cultural reaction towards some kind of changes, and yeah, I suppose that could be an idea of what manifesto is.
I mean, I definitely agree with my friend. I believe that manifesto is usually a document that puts out some idea of the writer, of some movement that something definitely needs to change, and it's usually very ideological. Yeah, that's my opinion.
From what I know, which is not much, I'm pretty sure it's a description of ideas. So, like political ideas. The first thing that comes to mind is the Communist Manifesto. So.
Is that Karl Marx or was that something else?
Karl Marx. Yeah, that's the first thing that comes to mind. So I guess just a description of ideas that they want to implement in society.
I think a manifesto is typically like I imagine like a book of all of your opinions on something that you think is important. Politics is definitely what comes to mind, I agree. I was actually thinking it doesn't have to be like specifically an ideology. I think in my opinion it can also be something that just addresses something that's going on politically. Because what comes to mind for me is there was a book published by a Yale professor that is about like identifying the signs of fascism, I think. That's what I think of also when I think of manifesto, other than Karl Marx.
Are manifestos effective communication tools nowadays? Why?
I don't think so, no. I mean, I think that even historically it's been a bit sort of iffy on having to read through someone's ideas for that long, but especially nowadays, there's no way someone's going to sit through what is basically a book just to find out the way someone thinks.
Well, today I'd say they're not, because there's a lot less emphasis on critical thinking, really. I mean, you have a lot less people who will actually make the effort to access this long-form piece of media and stay reading it through, because, I mean, that's just not really what's prioritized today. People are used to just absorbing the information that's given to them and, scrolling on to the next. They're not here to sit around for a long time reading a long book when they can just watch a 15-second Instagram reel.
It depends on how it's written, I think, and it also depends on the person. Of course, we're more primed for short form content, and also there are sometimes lots of barriers to long content as well. I think the best way forward is always to have multiple forms of communication. Like if you have a printed manifesto, you'd also have a digital version and an easy language version as well, or even voiced or through audiobook. The more forms you have, the more people you will reach.
I think that they can be if you know how to disseminate them to the correct audience, the people who have the power to take the initiatives mentioned in the manifesto, and if you put them in the right format. So if you want young people to be reading your manifesto, then long chunks of text might not be the right way. It could be a podcast or a poster or something. So if you disseminate them well, then they can be, I think.
It depends on who you ask. In my personal opinion. If, for example, I wouldn't say a manifesto is more viable for people from my generation, for example, for Gen Z, because I feel like they're more tuned into short form content and giant pages and pages upon words and words and words. I feel like it's more difficult for them to latch on and catch on the ideas presented rather than, like, for example, a 2-minute TikTok, for example.
Ifhem, fil-verità skont kif taraħħa, inti titraħħa hekk fil-verità l-ħajja, speċjalment il-ħajja taż-żagħżugħ hija ħajja mal-ġel. Inti biex tkun tista' tikkonnessi ruħek mal-żagħżugħ trid tuża ċertu mezzi online bħal Facebook, Instagram u anka eżempju minnu aktar intisu aktar professjonali jista' juża Twitter jew illum il-ġurnata kif inhu imsejjaħ bħala X.
I would say unfortunately not, because people don't read enough anymore.
Now, I think that in current times, not many people engage in reading overall. Of course, we are in a place of academia. Here, a majority of people read. However, I think that in a wide, normal public, among human beings, not that many people engage in reading of politics, even manifestos. Rather, they watch TV, and I think that in present, TV is the major object through which people learn about the political state of their environment and politics overall. So no, I suppose that manifesto is not the most effective way of communicating with the wide public.
I think for some people it definitely is. I mean, there is the whole thing of people don't like to read nowadays, and that's true, but I wouldn't. I would read a manifesto. I mean, I feel like it's a better way to get across your ideas if you have them all written, clearly stated. But that's just how I see it. Maybe some people are not inclined to read a whole thing.
I think it's a good idea when it comes to, like, when you're talking to other people who are into politics or actually pay attention to what's going on in politics. If you're talking to, like, it depends on your target audience of your manifesto, because if you're trying to get your word out to a large number of people, you have to take advantage of the tools that are most popular in that moment. In the past, that was like, written newspaper articles or like, I think that's how they did it in America when they were like gaining up for the revolution, is they had a bunch of like calls to action in the newspaper. But now you need like
social media for sure.
Social media, yeah. You need to kind of keep on top of what people are interested in. It's a very like, people don't think of it that way, but whenever you're trying to get people to think a certain way about something, you have to kind of meet them where they're at and make them
meet them halfway.
Almost think it's their idea. A manifesto still has like a role, but if your audience isn't like people who are willing to do the research or other people who are into politics, then you need to like meet them at where they're at, as opposed to, like, I think both are important, but they have different roles.
Exactly.
I would also disagree that it's not the most efficient way. I would even say that, in my opinion, the most efficient way is usually social media, and such as even shorts and this kind of stuff. I believe a lot of ideology is actually shared there, and it's affecting the general public, in my opinion, quite a lot. And I even know that some countries, such as Russia or China, have some programs to affect and change the way of thinking in different countries, such as manipulate elections, as we've seen in Romania, or there are even notions such as in Germany with the AFD, etc. Yeah.
And why do you think we don't utilize long form communication anymore?
Because we have gotten used to having all the information delivered to us instantly in the form, especially in the form of a short video. Like, we are so used to having someone explain something to you and then you swipe, and then there's another person explaining someone else to you and then you swipe, and you just keep doing that for hours and hours.
And do you think that's because we want media to be more entertaining, or we want media to be more informative, or do you have some kind of other view on that?
I definitely think that I'm not even sure if it's because we want to be media to be more entertaining, but it's definitely gone in that direction where people care more about how much fun am I having watching this thing rather than what am I getting from watching this thing. You know, like even news channels, especially in the USA right now, they will spread misinformation like it's like a wildfire, but they don't care because it keeps people watching, it keeps you entertained, blah, 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 that sort of thing. It just keeps you engaged. They don't really care what they're giving you.
Stimulated is the word I like.
Yeah, you could say that.
What do you think is the driving force behind this kind of shortening of attention span, perhaps like killing off of curiosity and interest?
The driving force, I mean, I guess it's really just complacency. You know, it's much easier to have a population that's just not really engaging with what's going on, to follow what you're doing, because when people aren't really engaging with material critically, then I mean they're not really going to engage with what's actually going on critically. Aside from just the news, they're going to look at real life events and just not really pay attention as much as they should.
I think just the way the landscape for our media has completely changed, how we've particularly majorly favored short form content throughout the past 5-10 years maybe. I mean, large platforms like Instagram Reels, Facebook Reels, YouTube Reels, every single major platform that once used to cater to long form content has a short form subsidiary afterwards.
That's excellent. Marshall McLuhan put it best, yeah, medium's the message, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think it's indeed a move away from having to work for things on being more hedonistic and too hedonistic these days.
So in general, you think that manifesto is not
Not the best way. I believe nowadays there are much more efficient ways how to communicate your ideology. Yeah.
However, if you really want to, become cool, I suppose at least one time in your life you should write some kind of a manifesto. Yeah.
It can't, because right now they're being blocked. So look.
So I've seen the last Hobbit film, and I haven't seen anything before.
You're missing out. You're missing out. Lord of the Rings
I
is...
tried to start watching it,
Really?
and I got bored within the first half hour.
It gets
It's
good.
so
I know, but it gets
I know,
good.
but it's